He is no longer just a TV star. He's the incoming leader of the free world. He's going to ring the bell here in about 20 seconds, an historic moment at the New York Stock Exchange as we get this opening bell rung by the president-elect, Donald Trump.
Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. You just saw Donald Trump ringing the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. Behind him looms an adulatory Time magazine cover naming him Person of the Year. This carefully choreographed spectacle exemplifies what Yale historian Tim Snyder calls obeying in advance. I spoke with Professor Snyder on this show before the election. His warning was stark. As the author of On Tyranny and a leading expert on authoritarianism, Snyder has spent decades studying how democracies fail. He talked about the many signs of authoritarianism already emerging in the U.S. before Trump's re-election. And he warned about exactly what we're now seeing happen, a rush to obey in advance. Time magazine and the New York Stock Exchange literally rolled out the red carpet for Trump. This isn't just a PR moment, it's complicity. Institutions like the Stock Exchange treat Trump as if his actions, multiple impeachments, felony indictments, inciting an insurrection, haven't deeply undermined democracy. I can almost understand Time's decision to put Trump on its cover in 2016. But now, after years of division, criminal charges and indictments, convictions, and his attacks on the press and our democratic institutions, it's inexcusable. And then there are the billionaires. Mark Zuckerberg donated $1 million to Trump's inauguration fund, as has Jeff Bezos, owner of The Washington Post, which Trump labeled the enemy of the people. Bezos took obeying in advance to new levels even before Trump's win, when he intervened to prevent his paper's editorial board from endorsing Kamala Harris. This fear is contagious. FBI Director Chris Wray has decided to resign rather than have to confront Trump's criminality during a second term. I am reluctant to make this comparison. Godwin's Law always comes to mind, but the echoes of German industrialist support for Hitler in the 1930s are unavoidable. They bankrolled the rise of Nazism, thinking they could control it. Men like Fritz Thyssen believed Hitler could serve their interests, suppressing labor unions and fending off communism. Instead, they were absorbed into his authoritarian machine. There's no better example of this than Elon Musk. Like those industrialists, Musk seems to believe he can navigate and benefit from authoritarianism. His acquisition of Twitter, his amplification of chaos, and his tacit encouragement of disinformation, it's all strikingly familiar. But history has shown us where that path leads, and it's never good. Autocrats don't rise alone. They rely on enablers, media outlets offering uncritical coverage or obeyance under pressure. Witness Joe and Mika's pilgrimage to Mar-a-Lago. They rely on business leaders who bankroll their campaigns and citizens who look the other way. It's Ken Harbaugh. Quick break to say thank you for all the support. If you value what we do here, please consider joining our Patreon community. The holidays are almost upon us, and if you are still wondering what to get for that hard-to-shop-for person in your life, consider a Patreon gift membership. Every dollar goes back into our work. Go to patreon.com/Ken Harbaugh to check it out. Back to the show. Trump's rise wasn't inevitable. It was facilitated by those who obeyed in advance. But it's not too late to resist. We must call Trump what he is, a dangerous demagogue whose actions have caused incalculable harm and who will cause even more if given the chance. We have reason to hope, though. Just look at South Korea, where democracy recently prevailed in the face of authoritarian overreach. Here is a moment of extraordinary bravery captured on video in which an opposition politician confronts a soldier enforcing martial law on the orders of the president. She grabs his rifle. She shames him, asking how dare he take up arms against his fellow citizens. This extraordinary defiance, repeated across South Korea, led to the impeachment of its president. Both parties came together to declare that his authoritarian overreach would not be tolerated. And while the 6 hours during which martial law reigned showed how quickly democracy can devolve, the pushback also showed that institutions can hold firm when leaders and citizens stand together. I can understand how South Korea wound up here. Technically, it is still at war with the North, and the temptation to exploit that kind of existential threat must be incredible. 20 years ago, I flew missions along the Korean DMZ, some of the tensest moments of my military career. The threat from the North is real and ever-present. So I get why President Yoon invoked that very real threat to attack his political opponents. But South Koreans saw through this manipulative alarmism. They recognized it as a ploy to consolidate power, and they stood firm. Could the same happen here? If Trump, for example, invoked the Insurrection Act to quell domestic protests, calling them a threat to the country, would Republicans join Democrats to hold him accountable? What if he deployed the U.S. military against civilians, as he already tried to do in his first term? Remember, but for Mark Milley holding firm, we very well could have seen the 82nd Airborne Division facing off against civilians in the streets of Washington, D.C. I want to believe that political leaders from both sides would respond appropriately. Jan Masaryk, the Czech diplomat and politician, once said, "Dictatorships look good until the last 10 minutes. Masaryk understood the danger of complacency. Authoritarians project a facade of strength until their inevitable collapse. Bashar al-Assad in Syria claimed to fight terrorism, but the Arab Spring revealed the brutality of his regime. I heard many of these stories personally. A decade ago, I served as a medic in a camp for Syrian refugees. The courage of the Syrian people was on full display last week as they finally toppled the Syrian regime, reminding the entire world that even in the darkest moments, the desire for freedom endures. Our democracy, already weakened by division and disinformation, will erode even further in a second Trump term. His enablers may believe they can contain the chaos, but they can't. We must resist at every turn. Compare what Time magazine did with its cover to this one from Vanity Fair. It's not subtle. It refuses to normalize Trump's lies and abuses of power. This is what resistance looks like.